Now I'd like to talk about a special kind of audience, farmers. All the points raised in the first part, where we discuss how you should adapt your presentation to your audience, are still very relevant to the special case of presenting results to farmers. But the difference between farmers and you, in terms of background, knowledge, and way of reasoning, is so important that we need to come back to the main points and develop them further. Because adapting to a farmer audience is not easy. So first, the audience doesn't come with the same background as yours. Usually farmers don't have any familiarity with research or statistics, and they may put more trust and value into stories or anecdotes than on the abstract generalization that researchers hope to discover. So when presenting results to farmers, it is very important to keep that in mind and to try hard to make results very relatable. And here are some tips to help you with that. First, you can try to present things in a way that is familiar to them. Explain how results have been obtained in a way that follows the usual process in a farm, for example. Use examples or anecdotes to help them relate to what you are talking about. Second, it might be easiest to understand a graph if they can find themselves inside the graph, where you have each farmer is represented by a point or a line. I'm gonna give an example of that a bit later. And try to emphasize this by giving some example, if you manage to have such graphs. A third point is to try to focus on the results that are useful for them. And the fourth point is to keep in mind that sometimes it might be more fruitful to just let a farmer present the results to the other farmers. And in that case, you might need to go beyond presenting and provide training to a farmer on presenting the results. The second thing to have awareness of and know how to deal with that is that we are not in the farmer's brain. And what is very difficult when presenting results to a farmer audience is that it is hard to know how they will look at a slide, a picture, or a graph, as well as what you should say or show to convey your message and make sure they understand why it is relevant to them. The literature remains relatively thin on the subject, and specific tips are hard to provide, but putting some extra attention to the following should help. First, put little text and avoid tables, because not all farmers know how to read first. So you should really focus on visual representations. Second, choose colors, icons, pictures very carefully. Icons can help, but if not chosen carefully, they can actually do more harm than good. Here's an example of some icons that have been found very useful in a study with farmers to redesign some kind of feedback form to them. So they worked with farmers and they found, yes, these kind of icons they have found they were very useful, but at the same time there are other kinds of icons in this study that have been found to be very confusing to farmers. So it is tricky, and it is something to keep in mind. The third thing is that you may want to keep things extra simple, yes, but actually more important than making things simple is making sure that what is shown is intuitive, because farmers can actually understand complex graph when it is made intuitive to them. Here's an example of a graph shown to farmers from the Women's Fields Project. And this graph looks very complex. Even for a researcher, it does look quite complex. But the farmers managed to grasp the meaning and see what the result was showing in this graph. One possible reason for that is that each line represents actually a farmer. So on the left, you have the yield when the treatment is not applied, and on the right, a yield when a treatment has been applied. And so each farmer could see on the graph that a line corresponds to his farm, and they managed to visualize with the color and the slope whether their yield had increased going from control to treatment or had decreased if they see a red line. And so that's an example of something quite complex that farmers can actually understand. And the opposite, in contrast, you have this other graph that seems very simple. It's a simple bar chart. This comes also from the same research I showed before on designing feedback form to farmers. And so this is one of the things they tested. And the participant did not understand this graph, this chart, even though it looks very simple. So yeah, that's something to really keep in mind. It is not easy to guess what will be intuitive to farmers. Bar chart, for example, that seem very simple, might not be the most intuitive for them. And the fourth thing that you should do when presenting results to farmers to try to help them grasp what you're telling them is to provide lots of guidance, obviously, but also to be very receptive to farmers' reaction and adapt to it. And spend more time on the things they are interested in and on the key points where you feel they struggle, and skip the things where you feel they are not interested in, or that when you feel they struggle too much, skip it as well. And there's one last thing that I think is really important when presenting results to farmers. It is to keep an open mind and be ready to learn things from the farmers as much as they learn from you, because their perspective on things is unique. And if you accept to genuinely listen to it and accept it, you will quickly realize how valuable and insightful it is.